Listen up. When you encounter underhanded tactics, most individuals commit a critical error. They respond from pure emotion or cling to ethical purity in situations that never operated on those terms. That's precisely their downfall. Our reality doesn't penalize scheming. It penalizes those who remain willfully unaware. The reality cuts deep, but demands acknowledgement. Those consistently outmaneuvered aren't lacking intelligence. They possess principles without tactical awareness. They maintain honesty without situational consciousness. They uphold decency in settings that actually reward perception, calculated timing, and understanding leverage. Enter Machiavelli's perspective. Machiavelli wasn't instructing cruelty. He was revealing how to overcome blindness. He grasped something contemporary society still resists. Genuine influence operates beneath the surface. Scheming doesn't appear hostile. Genuine threats rarely elevate their volume. Observe those employing questionable methods closely. They never hurry. They avoid direct threats. They don't lose composure. Instead, they project warmth. They exercise patience. They permit you to presume positive intentions while cataloging your behavioral patterns. They recognize what conventional wisdom never taught you. Most individuals expose themselves without prompting, through lengthy justifications, through unguarded emotional displays, through desperation for comprehension, acceptance, or perceived fairness. Machiavelli observed this centuries past. He noted that the swiftest path toward losing influence involves presuming everyone follows your operational framework. Manipulative individuals don't violate rules conspicuously. They subtly reshape circumstances. They avoid challenging your advantages directly. Instead, they maneuver around your assumptions, capitalize on your hesitation, and depend on your faith that situations resolve naturally. They achieve victory while you're still contemplating appropriate responses. This presentation isn't advocating heartlessness. It's not promoting dishonesty, deception, or transformation into what you despise. It concerns thinking with clarity when others prefer your confusion, because refusing to recognize manipulation doesn't demonstrate nobility. It renders you foreseeable. Machiavelli taught that navigating hostile terrain demands perception preceding morality, not abandoning principles, but safeguarding them. When someone employs dirty tactics against you, it's not superiority. It's superior comprehension of timing, psychology, and human vulnerabilities than your education provided. Once you comprehend their perspective, reactivity ceases, explanations stop, energy bleeding at harvest points ends. Your movement transforms entirely. I'll dissect 7 Machiavellian concepts demonstrating strategic thinking when facing underhanded behavior, not for domination or destruction, but achieving mental inaccessibility. Stay until completion. You won't feel increased anger. You'll experience greater calm, deeper grounding, and far stronger resistance to manipulation. Principle 1. Analyze advantages, not assumed motives. Most individuals attempt understanding others through a problematic inquiry. What's their intention? Machiavelli would declare this question worthless. Intentions remain invisible. Advantages are tangible. When encountering manipulation, perpetrators don't awaken thinking, "How might I cause harm today?" They consider, "What serves my immediate interests?" This distinction outweighs moral considerations eternally. The quickest manipulation pathway involves analyzing people through presumed intentions rather than observable benefits. You interpret tone. You seek genuineness. You evaluate consistency between verbal and emotional signals. Meanwhile, your counterpart tracks results, measuring leverage points, optimal timing, and access opportunities. This fundamental mismatch enables control transfer. Machiavelli understood behavior follows reward structures, not virtue. People duplicate what succeeds, abandon what costs them, and rationalize everything between. When judging actions through assumed goodness, you miss the underlying engine. Here's what manipulators excel at: positioning themselves where circumstances favor them, regardless of stated positions. They needn't lie explicitly. They require conditions where silence benefits them more than transparency. They needn't debate. They need environments where confusion delays you. While you question why someone acted, they're already planning subsequent moves. Good people get blindsided because they believe intent explains behavior. When harm occurs, they seek misunderstanding instead of motive. They mentally replay exchanges. They pursue clarity. They assume correction restores equilibrium. Manipulators anticipate this delay. Machiavelli suggests ignoring explanations entirely and posing a sharper question. What advantage do they gain if I accept this narrative? That question penetrates performance. If someone benefits from your patience, they'll encourage patience. If they profit from your silence, they'll reward restraint until it no longer serves you. If they gain from confusion, they'll never expedite clarity. Once you track advantages, patterns emerge rapidly. You notice who cooperates only under observation, who becomes vague when accountability approaches, who invokes fairness only when ahead, who suddenly references morality when consequences loom. None of this requires confrontation, only observation without commentary. Machiavelli cautioned that premature reactions teach others how to manage you. Immediate emotional responses reveal what matters. Demanding explanations reveals uncertainty. Seeking reassurance reveals dependence. Manipulators archive this intelligence. Instead, create mental distance. Allow behavior to continue sufficiently for revealing its trajectory. Observe what remains consistent when praise, pressure, and politeness are eliminated. Advantages don't deceive. They don't improvise. They replicate. This explains Machiavelli's valuation of patience over purity. Patience permits outcomes to communicate. Purity rushes judgment before the complete picture emerges. When you cease assuming shared values, you regain strategic positioning, not through suspicion, but through accuracy. You stop requiring closure. You stop demanding honesty from those profiting from ambiguity. You stop expecting alignment from those invested in imbalance. Here's the transformation most overlook. Once you perceive advantages clearly, emotional intensity diminishes. You no longer experience personal attacks. You experience information. That composure is power. You don't debate motives. You adjust access. You don't argue fairness. You change position. You don't expose your observations. You permit behavior to hang openly long enough for self-confirmation. Machiavelli never stated, trust nobody. He stated, understand first, engage later. The instant you stop asking, are they good, and start asking, what does this reward? You exit confusion and enter control. Comment. I read advantages, not narratives. Principle 2. Regulate proximity before attempting outcome control. Most individuals attempt fixing situations from incorrect levels. They concentrate on results. They debate decisions. They negotiate conclusions. Machiavelli would note they're already delayed. Genuine influence establishes before outcome discussions. at the proximity level. Manipulators grasp this instinctively. They don't initially contest final decisions. They quietly determine who receives closeness, who obtains information, and who gains emotional access. Once those parameters are established, outcomes follow organically. Many mistakenly assume presence equals participation. They remain involved from habit, courtesy, or fear of appearing difficult. They believe availability maintains relevance. Actually, it maintains exposure. Proximity isn't neutral, it's currency. Every instant someone enjoys uninterrupted access to your attention, they're gathering intelligence, your tone, your timing, your pressure points, your patterns. Manipulators don't rush this process. They observe calmly while you fill space with explanations, reactions, and availability. Machiavelli understood people treat you according to your accessibility, not your value. When access is constant, respect deteriorates. When access requires deliberation, behavior sharpens. This explains why manipulative individuals push for early familiarity, casual exchanges, frequent check-ins, unnecessary updates, emotional oversharing disguised as connection. Nothing is random. It reduces interaction costs. Once interaction becomes cheap, pressure becomes simple. You'll observe this pattern everywhere. Workplaces where people bypass structure for informal talks. Social circles where boundaries are labeled distance. Negotiations where manufactured urgency maintains your engagement. Machiavelli would advise stepping back, not dramatically, but deliberately. You don't announce distance. You introduce friction. You don't confront intrusion. You abbreviate exchanges. You don't explain absence. You normalize selectivity. This recalibration accomplishes something subtle, yet powerful. It compels others towards self-regulation. When access isn't automatic, people reconsider their approach. Tone improves. Requests gain clarity. Behavior tightens. Manipulators dislike this shift because it eliminates their ability to probe freely. Without steady interaction, they lose feedback. Without feedback, they can't adjust tactics. Here's where most people grow uncomfortable. They fear reducing access appears cold or arrogant. Manipulators depend on that fear. They frame boundaries as insecurity. They equate openness with confidence. Machiavelli saw through this illusion. Confidence doesn't require constant engagement. Authority doesn't require constant explanation. Strength doesn't require constant presence. By controlling proximity, you reverse effort flow. Others begin investing more to reach you. They prepare better. They reveal priorities faster. The dynamic quietly flips. Another overlooked aspect, emotional entry. Manipulators don't merely want your time. They want your internal state. Once emotions are involved, leverage multiplies. Reactions become predictable. Pressure becomes effective. Machiavelli would advise guarding emotional access more tightly than information. You can replace facts. You cannot reclaim exposed vulnerabilities. This doesn't mean emotional suppression. It means emotional privacy. You don't vent upward. You don't process publicly. You don't resolve internally while others observe. When emotions remain contained, decisions remain yours. Notice how people transform when they realize they can't reach you instantly. Some grow respectful. Some grow impatient. Some reveal entitlement. All provide useful intelligence. Proximity restriction isn't punishment. It's filtration. Those adapting respectfully earn closeness. Those pushing reveal intent. Machiavelli believed power grows where dependency shrinks. When others no longer depend on your immediate availability, interaction becomes intentional instead of habitual. The objective isn't isolation, it's selective exposure. When you determine who gets access, when, and at what depth, outcomes stop surprising you. You're no longer pulled into situations. You step into them prepared. Control proximity first. Outcomes will follow. Comment. My presence is deliberate. Principle 3. Permit others' self-revelation while remaining incomplete. Most people experience intense urges towards completing interactions. They want closure. They want understanding. They want conversations feeling resolved. Machiavelli would note, this impulse is a weakness. Completion satisfies ego, not strategy. Manipulators depend on your desire for neat finality. They provoke sufficient tension, triggering your resolution needs. Once that need activates, you begin offering clarity, reassurance, and explanation. Not because it benefits you, but because uncertainty feels uncomfortable. This is where advantage leaks. An incomplete posture keeps control mobile. When others don't know your position, thoughts, or interpretation of events, they remain exposed. They speak more. They adjust behavior impulsively. They attempt steering outcomes through overcommunication. Machiavelli understood people talk most when uncertain. Silence invites projection. Projection reveals intent. When you remain partially unreadable, others fill the void. They clarify motivations you never questioned. They justify choices you never challenged. They volunteer context that would have stayed hidden if you rushed responses. This isn't passive behavior. It's strategic restraint. Manipulators expect reaction or resistance. They prepare scripts for both. What they rarely prepare for is ambiguity. Ambiguity forces improvisation, and improvisation exposes weaknesses. Staying incomplete means resisting urges to correct assumptions immediately. If someone misunderstands you and the misunderstanding doesn't cost position, let it stand. The correction can wait. Their next move will reveal whether the confusion is innocent or useful to them. Machiavelli valued delayed clarity because it allowed patterns to emerge. One incident reveals nothing. Repetition reveals everything. When you close loops prematurely, you erase data. Most people reveal too much because they want accurate perception. Manipulators exploit this by deliberately misinterpreting, knowing you'll rush to clarify. In doing so, you expose priorities, limits, and emotional investment. Instead, allow interpretation to sit. Observe how others behave when they believe they have the advantage. Watch what they repeat. Watch what they escalate. Watch how they behave when they think you haven't noticed. An incomplete stance also protects your internal state. When you don't rush defining your position externally, you preserve flexibility internally. You're free to reassess without defending a public stance. Machiavelli understood premature commitment narrows options. Once you declare certainty, retreat becomes costly. Staying incomplete keeps options open while others commit through action. There's also a psychological imbalance created when you don't seek resolution. People accustomed to control feel unsettled. They attempt regaining equilibrium by talking more, pushing harder, or revealing frustration. Each response offers insight. This explains why manipulators try forcing conclusions. They demand answers. They push timelines. They frame delays as weakness. The discomfort isn't about clarity. It's about lost leverage. An incomplete position denies them that leverage. This doesn't mean stalling forever. It means choosing when completion serves you. Resolution should occur on your terms, not in response to pressure. Machiavelli believed power operates best when others move first. When they commit resources, statements, or behavior before you do, they limit themselves. You gain room. Staying incomplete also changes perception. People stop assuming access to your thoughts. They become cautious with words. They consider consequences before acting. Predictability fades. Many fear openness builds trust. Machiavelli would argue measured opacity builds respect. Trust grows from consistency over time, not instant transparency. Let conversations breathe. Let situations develop. Let people show you who they are without interruption. You don't need dominating dialogue. You don't need settling narratives. You don't need finishing what benefits from remaining open. When you resist closure, you stop being managed by urgency. You become the observer instead of the respondent. And observers determine outcomes. Principle 4. Neutrality. Functions as concealment. Emotion functions as location marker. Most people believe displaying emotion proves authenticity. Machiavelli would state it, proves targeting coordinates. Emotion tells others precisely where to aim. Manipulators aren't hunting honesty. They're hunting reaction points. Every visible emotional shift is a signal. Frustration shows where pressure works. Excitement shows where desire lives. Defensiveness shows where insecurity hides. None requires interrogation. It appears automatically when emotion leads behavior. This explains why experienced manipulators rarely rush conversations toward facts. They steer toward feelings. Once emotion surfaces, control becomes easier. Logic bends. Timing accelerates. Choices narrow. Machiavelli understood emotional visibility removes ambiguity, and ambiguity is protection. Neutrality functions like concealment. When expression remains measured, others struggle locating leverage. They test, they probe, they exaggerate. Each attempt reveals more about them than you. The mistake. Believing neutrality equals indifference. It doesn't. It equals discipline. You can care deeply without broadcasting it. You can be affected without advertising where. Manipulators depend on emotional confirmation. When they don't receive it, their certainty weakens. Notice how often people escalate when they can't read you. They repeat points louder. They sharpen tone. They overstate importance. This escalation isn't confidence. It's lost orientation. Machiavelli observed emotional restraint creates psychological imbalance. The person revealing less controls tempo. The person revealing more chases stability. This reversal quietly shifts authority. Neutrality also disrupts narrative traps. When you respond emotionally, others frame you as invested, threatened, or reactive. When you remain even-toned, framing fails. Observers struggle assigning motive. Without motive, judgment stalls. Manipulators rely heavily on labeling. Sensitive, difficult, uncooperative. Labels stick best when emotion supports them. Neutral behavior starves labels of fuel. Another advantage, internal. Emotional containment preserves clarity. When reactions are paused, perception sharpens. You notice inconsistencies. You catch timing shifts. You see alignment or lack thereof between words and actions. Machiavelli valued this internal separation. Feeling doesn't disappear, it's postponed. Postponement keeps choice intact. Many confuse emotional honesty with immediate expression. Manipulators encourage this belief because it benefits them. Immediate expression creates predictability. Predictability simplifies manipulation. Neutrality breaks that cycle. This doesn't mean robotic behavior. It means proportional response. Calm when others expect agitation. Steady when others expect reassurance. Minimal when others expect explanation. These mismatches force recalibration. Watch how people change when they can't provoke visible reaction. Some grow cautious, some lose interest. Some escalate recklessly. Each response is diagnostic. Machiavelli understood the safest position offers no emotional handle. Without handles, pressure slips. Here's also a reputational effect. Over time, people associate neutrality with gravity. Words carry more weight when emotion doesn't dilute them. Silence feels intentional instead of awkward. Presence feels grounded instead of reactive. This reputation changes how others approach you. They prepare more carefully. They choose words more deliberately. They test less frequently, not because you demanded it, but because uncertainty enforces respect. Many fear neutrality will make them seem distant. Manipulators exploit this fear by framing emotional openness as strength. In reality, uncontrolled emotion benefits observers more than participants. Machiavelli would argue inner intensity should be protected, not displayed. What's protected cannot be exploited. Neutrality also creates strategic delay without appearing evasive. You're not refusing. You're processing. You're not disengaging. You're observing. This posture buys time without inviting pressure. The objective isn't suppression, it's containment. Containment keeps reactions from becoming signals. Signals become maps. Maps guide manipulation. When neutrality becomes habit, manipulators stop trying. The cost of probing rises. The payoff drops. Effort moves elsewhere. And that's the quiet victory.